Hey everybody, Alex here, healthhacksreview.com. So I've been getting a lot of inquiries lately about, is there a way to basically dissolve non-invasively fat? Another term for that is lipolysis, using lasers. The answer is absolutely yes. This technology has been around, was first studied 20 years ago with low-level laser therapy. And it was found essentially that using wavelength somewhere between 635, 650, but most of those studies were around like 635 nanometers, so that's visible red wavelength, actually were able to induce, once enough joules of energy were received by the mitochondria, the chromophores on the outside of the lining and on the cellular membrane, when it excited to a certain threshold, ionically, would then open up channels and fat would be able to be released. And we're talking about here fatty cells that are fatty acids, okay? And so there's absolutely studies it works. We know it works. The FDA has given it clearance. This was years ago. But the biggest issue when you're assessing all these different sorts of brands and models and things out there is the ultimate conclusion that you make when you look at apples to apples comparison between all the brands is essentially that they're all mostly older technology. And this is the same for therapeutic laser industry. A lot of the brands out there are older technology, but with this one in particular, we'll find that whether it's LED or laser, they're all very, very low level in terms of their power, their wattage, okay? And in general, most of them are in actually milliwatts, not even watts. And so when we're talking about efficiency, what's like kind of the main goal? What do we want when we're wanting to get a lipo laser? Which again, remember, is externally on the outside of the body is applied. It's not going invasively in there. It's a little confusing, by the way. If you Google, you may also come across a couple companies that sell actual, more like surgical lasers, if you will, where they're going under the tissue and then using a laser inside of their version of liposuction. That's not what we're talking about here. Totally non-invasive, this one. These are also class 1 devices, so they're very low level. You don't have to have any special license or training. You can have a college kid administer the therapy. It doesn't really matter. But what's the most important thing when we're thinking about, I would like to get one of these lasers for my clinic or for myself? But especially if you want to get it for like a health center or you want to use it in a commercial setting, ideally what you want is for the treatment sessions to give good results, to have good efficacy, ideally again within the first 1 to 3 sessions. Now, saying that, the reality of the situation is that most of the companies won't give you a guarantee, of course, right? Because everybody's a little bit different, their metabolic profile, their lifestyle, etc. But even still, most brands and companies won't mention anything usually within that 1 to 3 treatment mark, because again, we're dealing with low level power here. So it's going to take a fair amount of treatments to really get the inches off. Could be 6 to 7 on the low end. To see maybe 1 inch to 4 inches. Again, it depends. There's always those kind of unique individuals that lose, 14 inches after a few treatments, and it's just, nobody knows how that happens. But in general, it's going to take several treatments. So from a marketing standpoint, for most of these brands, the big challenge is not getting an individual in the door per se, because you could always give away treatments completely free if you really had to, you wanted to. But the big challenge is upselling the package, okay? The package that will basically guarantee that you'll have a repeat customer and you'll have good word of mouth, meaning they'll get results. So you have to upsell that package of 5 at least, or 7 or 10 or 12 or something like that. So in your mind that most likely they're going to get noticeable results, and then at that point you can sell them future packages or at a discount, or they're definitely going to tell their friends, things like that, okay? So again, the big challenge with these devices is they take a lot of treatments. Um, so wouldn't it be great, right, in the ideal perfect world with these types of devices, if we can get results after just those first few sessions, like 1 to 3 sessions? Because essentially that would make the whole rest of the sales process, right, the marketing process, that much easier. Um, and I'll give you one example. A lot of the clinics that set up these, have bring a lipo laser into their clinic, could be a practice, an existing practice, a chiropractic clinic, whatever. They're synergistic in a lot of facilities for helping just to bring in new potential patients, right? But either way, a lot of people do living, social, and Groupon as a way to promote these types of devices. And if you don't know, normally promoting a sort of service on there, they take 50% of your profits, basically, that came from the service that you then sold or performed, okay, to the customer that was generated, which is a lot. But keep in mind that you're not looking for that one-off sale, right? And especially with lipo lasers, it's going to take multiple treatments. In general, people want awesome results. Everybody wants to lose a bunch of fat. So it's going to take a lot of treatments, right? So you're really recouping most of your, once you get them in the door, then you're just upselling the packages. So it doesn't really matter if they take 50% or you give away the treatments per se. But if you are able to basically get results in those first 1 to 3 sessions, then your word of mouth is just incredible, and your ability to upsell packages, absolutely no effort, okay? Which means the person that's talking to the customer, engaging them, they don't really have to have much of a sales background per se. You can't argue with somebody looking in the mirror or taking out a measuring tape, right, and saying, wow, like I really noticed I lost some fat. Um, and it's just going to sell itself. So what we're after here is, are there any devices out there, any brands of equipment that is simply more updated, that isn't using 15, 20-year-old technology, really leaning more towards 20 years and prior technology? Because you'll see some of these devices were cleared way back when, but keep in mind that they were already utilizing laser and optronics and spectropics and all that kind of stuff that was even 10 years prior at least. So it's old, it's old stuff. And so when it comes to efficiency with calories burned in a localized region, the efficiency of how quickly it takes to get the cells excited to release, right, the fat into the lymphatic system, the circulatory system. The rate at which that happens is dependent on your dosage, your irradiation, the amount of joules of energy you can get into an area, how stimulatory that is. So that's going to come down to, if you want to be more efficient and you want results faster, again, we need more power per paddle. And so all these systems pretty much have paddles. You'll see rectangular, something like that, which has little diodes on it. And those could be lasers again, those could be LEDs. If you do a little search on the website here under therapeutic lasers, you can learn more info on LEDs if you'd like to. But essentially, the main difference, okay, between a laser and an LED, doesn't matter if we're talking about lipo lasers or therapeutic lasers, okay, or hair lasers for that matter, is an LED is a single wavelength, okay, just like a semiconducting laser diode, but it's an incoherent beam, okay? So that means that if you remember those little waves, those wave of light waves, it's not moving in a very focused way, okay? It's more scattered, if you will. Like, for example, if your car headlights were lasers, or your spotlight or lamp in your house, instead of it being LED, was a laser, you'd have very minimal dispersion. Probably it wouldn't be that effective. It would just be, you'd see a little dot, a little point, right, on a wall, or on a car in front of you, a little dot, or it wouldn't even work on the road. We're counting on LEDs to really disperse the light waves in multiple directions, right? Regardless of how strong the LED is, it's still going all over the place, right? Versus a laser. So when it comes to kind of lipolysis, there's been a lot of debate going back and forth, as you can imagine, between lipo lasers that use LEDs versus lipo lasers that use LEDs. And I'll say this, that in general, when I've done a comparison, I've looked at all the results, I've gathered all the feedback over years and years. If we were just to say, okay, and I'm going to pull up my sheet here for a second because we're now going to talk about actual brands. So if we're looking at like a classic, one of the most well-known lipo lasers that is laser, that would be the Zerona. Okay, and that's from the company Erconia, which also does therapeutic lasers, but Zerona, Z-E-R-O-N-A. Okay, take a look at the website, by the way. And one of the first, it was FDA cleared lasers. They really capitalized, did a lot of heavy marketing years and years ago. And their device, lipo device, is probably one of the most recognizable because it has like a big robotic system. I mean, it's really neat looking. It looks very sophisticated and expensive. It is expensive. And it's got a whole robot arm system, and it goes on your abdomen and it moves, and it's pretty cool. So if we then look, though, okay, at how many milliwatts, what's going on there, is we see that it's 300 milliwatts. Okay, now keep that factor in mind, and I can always email this information to you if you just want to see it yourself. Let's look at another very classic one that was marketed a lot, iLipo. It's like the letter I, iLipo. That's 360 milliwatts. That's an LED. Okay, so most of these, almost all the brands you'll see, are around 320, 300, 360 milliwatts of power. Okay, but the LEDs or lasers. Now, there is going to be a difference, though, in the actual penetration quality between the beams. So, how come the Zerona gave the industry such a bad reputation? With these types of products, a bad reputation maybe. There was a lot of issues, especially on the West Coast, because a lot of practices and clinics and places using a Zerona, this laser lipo, basically were defaulting on their bank loans, and the banks were very pissed, basically. So they're defaulting on loans all over the place. The machine's $55,000 to $75,000. They're defaulting simply because the Zerona was not getting significant results with people. And from a marketing standpoint, word of mouth was not spreading well. It was hard to upsell those packages. And you got to recoup. I mean, that's $55,000 to $75,000. So, anyways, a lot of these practitioners were not happy. Okay, now we can't just compare and say, well, you know, it will. And let me just make a little statement here. A laser in general is a more coherent beam, so potentially, it has the possibility, in the right circumstances, if applied right, to put more energy deeper into a localized region than an LED. But depends on the application. So the problem with the Zerona was not necessarily compared to the other brands that it was 300 milliwatts, because that's the same. The issue was that the whole robotic arm system, which if you look at the pictures, just go on their website, you'll see there's, you know, at least a significant several-inch gap between where the beam and the skin, before it hits the skin. So there's a space, right? That's a very bad thing for a laser, okay? When you're guided in general to do laser therapy with a low-level laser, in case this would be a low-level laser, 300 milliwatts, and it's actually less per diode, but normally you're instructed therapeutically to push it right up against the skin, like right against it, and even firmly to move some of the blood out of the way. Okay, but this, if you have several inches gap and at a low level, like a low-level laser power, we're talking like 80–90% of that beam scatters off the surface of the skin. And literally just a few millimeters right underneath the skin, okay? And of course it depends on where you're treating as well. Fatty regions will even scatter it even more. So that's the issue. That's the issue with that, or any device that's several inches away from the body. The only way you can get away with having something, and this goes for therapeutic lasers as well, but for anything that's several inches away from the body, and it's a good deal with this one laser, is if that laser is a true continuous wave laser, like 60 watts, okay, 60,000 milliwatts, not 300 milliwatts, you could get away with that, no problem. But we're a long ways off from 60 watts, so with most of these devices. So really, YOLO Curve, if you've heard of that one, they're the ones who really had all the original clearances on using lasers for lipolysis, okay? And they get old technology, but they certainly let everybody know that. They're trying to sue other companies and so on and so forth. And so with theirs, the reason theirs is now superior as a laser lipo than, let's say, the Zerona, is because it's on a paddle, and that laser, that low-level laser, is right up against the skin. Okay, big difference there versus several inches away. So meaning their device is going to be way more effective than like a Zerona, for example, for a laser system. And LED or laser, it's going to always be more effective when it's right up against the skin. And just so you know, pretty much all these brands, with the exception of the Zerona, are away from the body. Everything else is right against the skin, right against the fat in the region. So that's just normally not something you have to even concern yourself with. So am I recommending a Zerona? As you can tell by now, no, I'm not. Unless that device was a couple $1,000, $2,000 or something like that. But it's way off from that. That would probably be the only case I would definitely recommend buying it if it was that cheap. But that's impossible. So. And the company itself, I don't even know if they've recouped, by the way, all their costs for producing these devices. But anyways, so YOLO Curve, also a laser, right up against the skin, way more effective. Okay, and they do good beam diodes as well. So that's another thing that we have to look at, is we have to look at who's manufacturing those diodes and what kind of standards are going with those diodes. So there's a lot of research to do here. There are a few companies that have slightly better diodes than other companies. Some are using cheaper LEDs. Some are more like SLDs, superluminescent LEDs. They're a little bit stronger. That's another little factor I've looked at also as well. And that has a little bit of an effect on penetration quality. But my general statement here, the conclusion of the video, is that even the other LED lasers, ultra slim, strawberry light, chromogenics, okay, which is behind iLipo. What's the other one called? Let me look here. Lipo Light. They're all pretty much the same amount of power. 300 milliwatts, 320 milliwatts. The slight difference is how many paddles or pads they give you for the price. Obviously, more paddles is better. I'd say at least have 8, so you can cover more surface area. You can get more done, treat more regions. And then you look at how many diodes. It's usually like 4 to 8 diodes, okay? And in general, again, you have to look at the amount of power, and you look at the total power, the milliwatts per pad, and then how much that's being distributed per diode. And my general conclusion is that you're always going to see about 4 to 8 diodes per paddle, because they're all pretty much using, once again, the same technology. So you'll see a varying price tag, by the way, from like 10,000 up to 62, 80 even, all the way up to that huge range. But they're almost about the same. And that's basically what I've learned over years and years. Because we can break this thing down very simply. These are very simple devices, simple LEDs. And by the way, what am I recommending here? If we were to say LEDs over lasers, I don't quite recommend the YOLO Curve because there's not quite as many diodes per paddle. So it takes, to cover more surface area, takes more treatments. It's true that they're able to deliver a little bit more power per diode, but they just don't cover enough surface area. That's the main issue. They're also pretty costly. They're on the upper end of the spectrum, 74,000, 950, somewhere up there. Okay. In general, it's going to be a little bit better to have 8 diodes. That would be more helpful to cover more treatment areas. And in general, people want to cover a few treatment areas. The gut, the sides, the hips, all these different areas. Especially women usually want to contour, ideally, multiple areas, as long as it's not too costly and they can do it efficiently as far as time goes. 8 diodes is good. LEDs versus lasers. What we've generally seen is that in terms of treatment time, if they're good LEDs, like superluminescent LEDs, SLDs, versus just traditional LEDs, they're pretty much on par with a good laser diode. What's going to really separate the two is how, as far as efficiency, is how many diodes per paddle, and then also what's the total milliwatts coming out of each paddle. And most of them are very similar, so they do give similar results. So what is this leading up to? I'm going to tell you about currently what is the most efficient brand, the most efficient equipment, Lipo Laser. And the reason it's the best in terms of efficiency, right? How many inches can we slim down? How much lipolysis can we induce? Minimal amount of sessions, treatment sessions. The brand is Body Light, okay? And Body Light, they don't do a lot of advertising in terms of selling it. They're really focused generally. They don't aggressively sell. They're more into just setting up locations per se, lipo treatment locations versus selling. That's one reason. But they're also very new. Just came out 3 years ago. Are FDA cleared. But as far as the rest of the industry and just the other technology out there, that's very, very recent. That's very new. So they're using some of the latest technology components, laser components, spectroscopy, all sorts of stuff. It is manufactured in the United States too, which is unusual. Really good facility. So this thing, it actually costs back. I'm trying to remember the actual cost to make these things. It's at least 8 to 10 times higher priced to actually just manufacture it than the other lipo brands out there, the other equipment. And part of that's because we're dealing with more of a local manufacturer in the United States, okay? And we're also, the actual modules inside, all the components are much higher grade. Of course, they're going to cost more. This is the same for any type of equipment. Most of the equipment out there is very, very, very cheap to manufacture, especially because it's old technology. So meaning these manufacturing facilities, the old designs, those older components, those are a fraction to manufacture as far as price today than where they were back then, which was cutting edge. Okay, back then it was 8 to 10 times higher to manufacture those, and the prices may have been justified for those lipo lasers. But in general, what you'll see is these lipo laser companies have kept the prices pretty much the same. For YOLO Curve, for example, YOLO Medical, and almost all of them, for them to justify those prices still is just crazy. They're 5 to 8 times higher than they should be for what you could get nowadays, okay? So Body Light is putting out a huge amount, on average at least 20 times higher amount of power per paddle. And they also utilize what's a very common technology or setting, I should say, for putting out a higher amount of power, is pulsing. So they're the only equipment that pulses their diodes rapidly, but it's not super pulsing. It's pulsed just enough so that they can basically see the issue when you have something right up against the skin and per that paddle and the amount of diodes is they start to get very, very warm if you go past a certain threshold. What is that threshold? That threshold is around 300 milliwatts, 350, maybe 400. That's why you'll see when you do apples to apples comparison on specifications with all the brands out there, the other lipo brands, they're all kind of the same because they were all drawing from the same grade of components, the same level of engineering and knowledge, old stuff. And so they're kind of maxing out, just like a computer, at certain stages, you weren't going to go past, 1 gigahertz, right, for a processor. You weren't just going to go past that. as far as processing power. Same thing. So with the body light, they're able to squeeze out a lot more without overheating the paddle and the components by pulsing it. So it turns off, it turns on, but very rapidly. So as I've talked about with therapeutic lasers, that's okay to do, per se, when it comes to inducing lipolysis, as long as you know what the average output power is, okay? Meaning, as long as you know, for all the times that the spen's turned on, if you added all of that up in a period of time, like a second or a minute, it doesn't really matter, what would that power equivalent be? And then we can compare that to the other brands out there that just stay on the whole time, okay? And then we can see if that's higher. So they were basically able to squeeze out, they found a way to squeeze out as much power as possible without overheating and damaging anything by pulsing. And the pulse frequency selected, meaning how often it turns off, was of course put to a minimum. You want it to stay on as much as possible, but it took a lot of R&D and money and expense and time to figure out literally what that frequency was. How long does that have to stay turned in the off mode for it to not overheat and damage it over time and affect the diodes over time? Because that's the main problem with lasers in general, LEDs, is overheating and damaging a diode and burning it out more quickly. So they figured that part out. So it's able to deliver something much, much higher and without overtaxing the system. But the other way that you don't overtax the system as much is you just need a better creative components, a better technology. And it's better just simply because it came out a few years ago. And things have advanced in optronics and spectropics a lot in the last 20 years. So price tag on this is somewhere around 50,000, 49,000. You can actually, there's so much power in the system, you can run 2 separate treatments, 2 different people at the same time off of the same module, off the same system, to literally show you how much power this actually has comparatively. 2 sessions at once, 8 to 16 paddles at once that you can do. But so this system, there's pay-per-click options that you can do, there's lease options that you can do, all sorts of different things, meaning there's a million ways to make it workable in terms of cash flow, bringing this into your system. And then keep in mind that other people are charging a lot more for using this system, the few people that are selling it out there. And I say few, meaning few compared to some of these brands that have lipo lasers. They've been selling them for 15, 20 years, okay? But they're charging a lot more with the body light treatments because they can, because it can be equivalent to like 5 to 15 treatments comparatively per 1 treatment session with the body light compared to the other competitors. So they can be charging anywhere from $80 to $300 for just 1 session with the body light. And this is excellent for marketing. So from a marketing standpoint, if you want quick ROI, if you want to get a lot of people in the door and just majorly work the word of mouth buzz, okay, the body light system is best because 1 to 3 sessions, people will notice the results, okay? And by the way, this is a side tangent. The scam that a lot of other lipo laser companies do is the demo. When they first off, they send somebody out to you, you know they're overcharging you a lot when they can afford sending people out to do these demos. But the scam is that they'll come in for a day, or they'll let you try out a system for a day, and you do a treatment session, and then they measure the person, their waist, if they're treating the waist, for example, before and after a session. This is ludicrous. Your body can't process all the fatty acids that induce lipolysis and clean it out of your system and have noticeable reduction in those areas in 1 treatment session. It's bogus, even if you measured it at the end of the day. For somebody to really notice that and it to be that measurable, you're just metabolically, you're going to need really over 24 hours, I would say, to have the best chance of showing somebody results. So to measure somebody before and after, the reason people are able to convince a lot of practitioners to get these really like cheap systems, cheap to make, that really take a lot of sessions to get results. the reason they're able to sell them so well is they do this scam. They do this little trick, if you will. And so what is measurable that quickly is loss of water. Okay, so if you see results, and even really good results, very quickly, within 24 hours, it's going to be usually lost water weight in that area, mainly, okay? Remember, the body is mostly water, okay? So, but that's not what we're after. So we want the type of results where we do a couple treatment sessions, right? And 48 hours later, and ideally the person's done a little bit of exercise or used a whole body vibration machine or something like that. But within that period of time, and we say, hey, come back in, let's do some real measurements, things like that. And you know, it's noticeable. I mean, your body will fluctuate, by the way, 4 to 7 pounds throughout a week. 3 to 7, it just depends on the person how heavy they are. Just from water weight alone, you'll fluctuate up and down. It's just like getting on a scale to weigh yourself after eating, you know, a few extra 1,000 calories. Let's say you overeat in a day, and weighing yourself at the end of the day. Some people do this, or even the next morning. You're not going to pack on weight that fast. It's going to hit you because of many direct and indirect metabolic methods, maybe 48 hours later and even days later. Okay, it'll catch up with you. So they convince a lot of people, they end up buying machines because they're like, oh my god, wow, I see all these results. It's water weight, usually that early on. We're after real lipolysis here, okay? And it's perfectly okay from a marketing ROI standpoint to just, as long as you inform people that, look, we're going to do some sessions, let's do follow-up measurements and really track this over the next 3 to 4 days. And let's get a little bit of the type of exercise in here that's going to at least increase your circulation and really move your lymphatic system as much as possible. And then let's really make a fair assessment here, because we don't want to get any false readings with just loss of water weight, okay? Which will still factor in, though there will still be some loss of water weight. So just keep that in mind, that some of those inches, even days later, will be lost water weight. That's to be expected. That's how fat is going to move outside the cell through this facilitation of water and the water molecules that are bound up in the fat, right? But we are really, again, after, right, not so much the water loss. So I just wanted to kind of elaborate on that, because you may have already been fooled by some of these companies that do that sort of, it's really like a sales strategy, if anything. And there's even a lot of, I would say that for a lot of these machines out there, equipment these practices have, they use that to their advantage, the before and after measurement, or even the next day measuring with their customers, because they know that there'll be a lot of water loss locally and that it'll definitely be measurable. And there's other measuring tricks and things like that that some of these clinics play. And they have to play these games, though, keep this in mind. They have to play these kind of dishonest games, if you will, because the devices they're using will induce lipolysis. They all do work effectively, but over time, right? And that's the main challenge here, is how do you keep stringing somebody along or upselling those packages, you know, 8 treatment sessions in, 12 treatment sessions in. That's the key here. So that's why this is a great piece of equipment, is those first few sessions we'll see some really significant noticeable results. And that's why what I've seen, that in these clinics that use the body light, their ROI is the fastest I've seen of any, by far, of any other type of brand out there. They are usually having an ROI within, like a complete ROI for the system, completely paid for, on average like 2 months, I would say. That's pretty fast. And I would add that they're all pretty much following the same type of marketing system, using a Groupon or Living Social, and that's it. And that's it, and the rest is word of mouth. So you don't really have to have much of a marketing background or knowledge of, you know, just running a business, right? To just use those 2 systems, get in enough people, and then just work the word of mouth. That's fast, 2 months on average. 3 months, 2 months, I've seen 1 month, I've seen less than 1 month on rare occasions. Obviously depends on your demographic and where you're located and where you price things. You have to look around and see what other types of spas and things are doing, do a little bit of homework, of course. But and this brings me to another side note of another big difference between all these brands is business support, marketing support. Very few of these companies really do that adequately and do a good job. And the point is they need to for equipment that doesn't really get a lot of results because they're lower level. I mean, they get results, but they're just slower, remember, okay? They all work, they're just slow. So this brings us to the point that if we're just looking at those lower level, older technology brands, it is very important that the company has a good track record of support and follow-up and ROI and really focusing on building your business and helping you. Very few companies do that. The number one company that is excellent for business support and has the most Lipo lasers out there because of that, because of their affiliate network, and it's just very strong, is Lipo Light. And they understand that. There's actually one other unique thing about theirs, and they also use infrared on their device, which I think is actually a great idea, and it really offers a lot of synergistic benefits, and I think actually accelerates and potentiates the results versus all of the other brands that just use red wavelength. So I think that's a very smart design on there. So actually, they're one of my favorite. Their price point's $24,000, very reasonable. And actually, many times they do a promotion and sell it for less than that. Really not unusual. Have the same type of financing and leasing, but very strong business support. Okay, and I'll be perfectly transparent with you. The body light company that makes the body light doesn't really have a lot of strong business support. What they can show you, and you can even talk to them, is all of the other clinics and centers that have used their system, that have been successfully using their system for a few years, and you can always get marketing tips from them. What are they doing? What was their system that worked? In general, the main system is using Groupon and Living Social, and that's sufficient because you get such good results. It just takes care of itself. The word of mouth, the buzz. You can actually kind of count on that, by the way, in this industry versus like the therapeutic laser industry, because weight loss is a multi-billion-dollar industry. And if you have something that can help somebody slim down with not a lot of real effort involved and get results and just make that fat disappear, you have a gold mine, essentially, if it really is that effective. So this is kind of, the body light's the unusual example that, okay, you can kind of just bank on and count on how effective it is, if you will, okay? And that people go crazy for anything that works when it comes to weight loss, right? And then you can use their existing systems. What are other people doing that made their centers really, effective and had good ROI? You just copy them. It's the same thing. It's worked in every city. It's worked in every town. You never really have to deviate from that. It's not rocket science. If you've already run a business or you have an existing place, you already kind of learned a lot about just running a basic business. If you really feel like you want more hand-holding and support, go with a company that has an awesome track record with that kind of thing, especially with the Lipo laser business, and are probably number one when it comes to that. Just helping centers be successful. And you just basically need more of that support. Lipo Light, great option. It just kind of drops off from there, to be perfectly honest. Most of the systems are similar in their effectiveness, amount of treatments, and they really, really lack the business support. Okay, that aspect of it, and helping people get ROI. And they don't have that infrared on it as well. So I would stick with those top two choices. If I were you, you can't go wrong with either one. Most people lease either one anyways, so even though, for example, the body light is more expensive, most people aren't coming out of pocket to pay, and both of those, again, the ROI is really good with both of those companies. So worst case scenarios I've seen is companies are making a lot of money, but they're eventually paying it off within 6 months to 2 years. That's not that, again, that's not that long. That's what most people are paying off either system with, 1 to 2 years. And I would say that that's, again, the worst case scenario. That's unusual. If you're doing things right and things go like they normally go for most clinics, 2 to 3 months, 2 to 4 months, you can pay off a system and be having an awesome, tremendous cash flow. And remember that if you already have other adjunct services, a lipo laser is a fantastic thing to bring in to where you already have existing services, existing practitioners. It almost doesn't matter what you're doing. If it's health related, awesome, because this brings a huge influx of people that you might normally have to spend a lot of money to target and bring in. Weight loss just brings in a lot of people. And then at that point, you have hundreds of additional people coming in. And you basically can really target and fine tune and get just a core group of those people that you think are going to be really good to basically sell them additional services and support. As I always say, I'm a big proponent of health, of course, and in a holistic, from a holistic standpoint. So what is really important for a lot of these people is that you offer them health coaching, so that as you're zapping off the fat, and they're losing that, which is good, that they're keeping it off, okay? Because you can, if you don't change that lifestyle, right, of what their choices were that led them to additional fat, it's just going to come right back, statistically. We know that, okay? Same thing of just going on a diet, right? Most people gain it back plus, right? So you always want to offer them really good health coaching and nutrition, lifestyle coaching, life coaching, just all sorts of stuff, right? To really shift their mindset, essentially. That's what we're trying to do here. As far as other equipment you might need, the number one piece of equipment sold, or that's at a clinic that has a lipo clinic, is rebounders, exercise bikes, elliptical machines. Number one, whole body vibration machines. Check out my whole body vibration machine info on the site. There's a ton of it. Healthhacksreview.com. And the reason that that equipment is used so heavily, just watch my couple intro videos to get a little bit of a better understanding of it. But essentially because it's amazing for the lymphatic system. Probably one of the best things for the lymphatic system, and circulatory system. And it's able to just open up through acceleration of G-force and frequency, just open up a lot of things in the body very rapidly, meaning it's very efficient, essentially. Okay. And yes, it does do some things that other forms of exercise can't quite do. But number one, it's very efficient. So you can have somebody in there for, let's say, a 15-minute session. By the way, the body light's the quickest session, 15 minutes, extremely rapid for the results it gets. Some other companies can be like 30 to 45 minutes plus for a treatment session. But and LipoLight's pretty quick as well. But anyways, but when you give somebody a lipo, light treatment, then you have to ideally, you don't have to, but ideally you could just offer them the service of exercise right there. And a whole body vibration machine takes up a very minimal space and it's quick. So we're saying put the person on there for at least 10 minutes. Put the person on there for at least 15 minutes. And that'll make a big difference right after the session, right after, okay? And versus counting on them to, go do some exercise that day, and you're counting on them to do that. You really just kind of want to, again, to make sure you get those consistent results, is you have them right then and there, put them on a machine right there. And the sum total of how long they should stay there, 30 minutes, 45 minutes because that's a normal appointment time, right? That's a normal time maybe to go to the gym or what people are used to. You don't want to have this turn into some 2-hour ordeal, right? Or like an hour and a half. That's just too long. You want somebody to be able to say, hey, come in on your lunch break from work, do a session, do your quick machine, go back to work, right? That's going to help you with your ROI, because you're going to get all sorts of people that might be really busy, but everybody can squeeze in 30 minutes or 45-minute appointment, right? And you get the treatment and you have the exercise combined in one package. So anyways, this became a super long video, but This is kind of, pretty thorough. It's mostly everything you need to start to think about, and it's going to also start to give you some types of more specific questions that you might want to ask me. Inquire by email, set an appointment with me. And if you want to talk more about the specifics of marketing support, training support, things like that, then probably one of my associates would get back to you. One of my associates who's kind of more of an expert in that area and helping each business. But essentially, it's very simple equipment to bring in and utilize. And again, you don't need any special license per se or any special license training. You don't need to go anywhere. They're very simple to administer. And again, you could get an intern, a college person to do this for you. Don't have to have any special sort of training. They're very safe devices from an insurance standpoint, a legal standpoint. Again, no risk. They're just a class one devices. Okay, over the counter in a way, essentially, is another term that's at this level. So be happy to talk to you more about lipo lasers. It is a very lucrative thing to have in a business, a great thing to bring in a lot of people, even if you do other sorts of services. It's just a great thing, again, to bring in new patients or bring in new clients. And you can use it like as a marketing tool in a way, essentially, as a strategy. So even if weight loss doesn't really concern you, you're not interested in it, just think about that one aspect of it, that we're talking about bringing in hundreds and hundreds of people that you might not normally be able to so easily bring in. And normally a lot of them are pretty overweight, so they need a lot of help and may very well have other conditions. Anyways, thanks for watching.